Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the 31 Days of Horror. I am your host, Mood616, and thank you once again for stopping in, guys. Yes, 31 Days of Horror Volume 8, Day Dukes. And yeah, we're gonna take it all the way down south from where I live, all the way to Mexico, with a film directed by Adrian Garcia Bagalano. He's probably mostly known for directing Late Phases. A lot of people know Late Phases. He did one, Sergio Diabolical, a few years back that I really enjoyed. I thought that was great. I did 36 Paces, Cold Sweat, Penumbra from 2011. He worked on the ABCs of Death. He's been around. He's done a lot of films that are really good. He also did Here Comes the Devil. I think that's another big one that he did too. I really enjoyed that one too. So Late Phases, Here Come the Devil, probably the bigger ones that he's done. But lots of good work. Cold Sweat was really good. But anyways, yeah, this is an interesting one because this is like a Mexican film, but it's shot and it's based in Sweden. It's actually in Swedish language. So it's like a Mexican / Swedish co-production kind of deal. Pretty cool. And it is it's a film from 2018. It says 19 on the back here. IMDb says 18. Gonna go with that. And it is called Black Circle, released by Synapse Films. And of course, this one's starring the infamous Christina Lindberg, of course, who starred in Thriller, A Cruel Picture, or They Call Me One Eye. So I was really excited to see that because as soon as I saw her name, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I looked into it and I was like, oh, they shot it in Sweden in Swedish language. Makes sense that she's in this. So, but yeah, Black Circle. So it's a modern day film released by Synapse Films. They don't really release a whole ton of these. Most of the releases are more retro releases. So this was kind of an interesting one to get released by Synapse. But getting into the premise of this one, basically it follows these two sisters. The one sister, she goes to see her other sister at her like corporate job. She's got this brand new job. And I think the consensus was that the other sister, she was struggling a little bit. And she got her life together and, things started going really well for her and stuff like that. So the sister goes to visit her and she's like, and she's kind of like a partier and stuff like that. And life is kind of in shambles a little bit. And she says to her sister, she's like, you're doing really good and stuff like that. So her sister says to her, she's like, well, I can, straighten you out. And this is how I did it. Basically, she listened to this record and it like straightened out her life and stuff like that. And things started going really well for her. So her sister's got the corporate jobs, gives her younger sister the record to go home and listen to and stuff like that. And so she's very hesitant. She's out partying and doing her thing and just kind of living her fucking scrambled life and stuff like that. Anyway, she throws on the record and she doesn't really know what the impact is going to be. And what happens is, so it's not really a spoiler alert because this kind of happens at the beginning of the film, but what happens when you listen to this record is that it creates a doppelganger of you. And the doppelganger isn't necessarily evil. It's just it's like a paranormal version of you that exists in this reality. But what it's doing is it's created back from your energy. And when it creates this doppelganger, the doppelganger tries to basically kind of suck the life out of you in essence and try to become you. So if you let this thing take all your energy, it becomes the real you and you become the doppelganger. So it's kind of got this really twisted type idea to it. So anyways, so this happens to her. She like creates this doppelganger and her sister has one too and stuff like that. Anyways, they try to figure out how the fuck they can stop this because it's like, what do you do? Like, how do you stop a doppelganger? So what they do is they go to find who actually created this record, and it's by Christina Lindberg. She's like this scientist, kind of doctor scientist or whatever. So they find and locate her. They go into like this test facility and stuff like that, and then they start the process of trying to get rid of this doppelganger and stuff like that. So that's basically the premise of the film. Might sound a little bit confusing. It's not really that confusing. It's just, you got to pay attention. You have to pay attention to it. So anyways, my thoughts on the movie. First up, I thought the idea for this movie was very, very fresh. I really like the idea of listening to a vinyl record, and it just from listening to it, it creates this doppelganger. But I like the idea of that the doppelganger wasn't necessarily the evil of you. It was just the essence. It was the energy of you. And I really like the idea that it just basically, it's kind of like a bloodsucker in a sense without even really knowing it is. It just wants to be you. So at your weakest and most vulnerable and stuff, it starts to suck the energy, the life out of you. And then, like I said, if it if it sucks all of it out of you, you become the doppelganger and it becomes the real you. So it's kind of a really cool idea. I thought that was really fresh. Now, my thoughts on the movie, like the execution of the idea, I thought was a little bit interesting. I was kind of hoping for something a little bit different when I saw this premise, because I didn't really know much about going into it. But what they do is, like, once we get introduced to, like, the idea of this doppelgangers and this whole alternate reality, this paranormal reality and stuff like that, and these ideas, it like really does focus on what they call a reverse exorcism, right? So once they locate Christina Lindbergh's character and her partner, they get right down to business. And there's also like kind of a side story with these other two characters that have these abilities. They almost have the Shining. They can read each other's thoughts and talk to each other through their thoughts and stuff. So they don't refer to it as the Shining, but right away I was like, that's the fucking Shining right there. They refer to it as something else, and it was a power given to him by this like kind of meteor that's involved in this whole process. And it's a really weird thing that really wasn't fully explained in the film, and I wish they had of, because these characters kind of appear and then they have these abilities and they kind of take it back to like, this kind of medium thing. And I was like, okay, well, there's not really a lot of explanation for it, but they do become a pretty big part in the essence of, the third act and stuff like that. But yeah, like, I feel like the whole movie is just basically them trying to reverse exorcise. And now what I mean by reverse exorcise is, like, you obviously know what an exorcism is when, a priest comes in and it exorcises the demons out of your body. Well, in this case, it's completely reversed. They need to exorcise the doppelganger back into you. You need to absorb that energy back into you so you retain the real you and it doesn't become you. So I thought that was kind of an interesting premise. Now, the whole movie focuses on that. I wish it had played off a little bit more, but I guess in hindsight, looking back on it now, they refer to these doppelgangers as not being evil. So if you wanted a narrative where these doppelgangers were, basically haunting, the real life person and stuff like that, it really wouldn't make a lot of sense. But I was kind of thinking it was going to go that way, but it doesn't. It kind of goes like this whole, this exorcism, this whole alternate reality, and trying to exercise these things back into the people and stuff like that. So it focuses more on the medical and the paranormal side of things. So that was a little bit different. But yeah, visually this movie is, and aesthetically, is awesome, man. There's a lot of really trippy shit going on. The movie starts out with this black circle, and it's basically like this hypnotizing thing. And I was like watching it going, holy shit, am I going to get hypnotized? Like, it was pretty fucking wild, man. And it goes on for like a while. And I was like, damn, I kept kind of looking around like, am I getting hypnotized? Like, that's never happened to me before. Because usually when you show those things on film or TV or whatever, it's only for a couple seconds. This went on for minutes. I was like, holy shit, like, they're really trying to hypnotize you. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, like, visually, it has a lot of really trippy things going. I thought the effects in the film were pretty cool. The acting seemed like it was pretty well done overall. Christina Lindbergh plays a really good character. I really like her throughout the film. But yeah, the sound design and the way the music is in the film, oh, it's great. It's really, really good. It's like, it's very pleasing to watch. You can tell it's a lower budget film. Like Adrian Garcia and Boglano films generally are lower budget. Not to the point where they're shot on video or anything, but like they're lower budget. So you kind of know what you're getting yourself into when you watch one of his films. But I think overall, the whole appeal of the film was really well done. It looked good. It sounded good. It just had all that type of thing. The aesthetic was fantastic. But as for the execution of it, I think that there's a little bit more to desire. I think there's a few things that weren't completely developed. There's a lot to the whole paranormal side of these doppelgangers and like how exactly they created this record. And there's a lot of mystery behind the story. I think there's a lot of elements that are missing out of this, which was kind of frustrating to watch because I wanted to know more. Like, what the fuck they did to create this record that literally makes a doppelganger out of you. Like, that's a crazy idea. So I think this one might leave people wanting a little bit more. I thought the ending was pretty cool. I thought it was a little tad predictable in the way it goes down, but in hindsight, I was thinking about it today when I was delivering mail. I was like, what? It was actually still pretty good. Again, I'm an aesthetic type person. I'm a visual person. So the visuals and the aesthetic and, the whole, just even the general idea was enough for me, but it got me thinking today because I watched this last night before I'm doing this review the next day. And I'm just like, Yeah, there's a little bit more to be desired. Sometimes you don't need everything explained, but in this instance, I felt like the explanation actually would have been pretty cool. Because a lot of the stuff that they're talking, they're using all these big words. They don't just call them doppelgangers. They call it like a Euro double or something like that. It's like some really weird word, and they use all this crazy terminology and stuff, which I'm not going to try to get into it even pronounce because I'm not just doing that. I'm not doing that shit. But anyways, Black Circle, man. So for me overall, was very fun. It was a very fun film, in the aspect of visual pleasing, you know, and I thought it was pretty interesting. Not really a whole lot more to say. I mean, there's not really a lot of like straight like hardcore horror elements. It's definitely a horror film. It feels like when it's shot like one, but there's no blood and gore and stuff like that. But yeah, I think my favorite thing about the movie was the visuals and the sound design. Awesome stuff. Really, really good stuff. So, yeah, Black Circle from Adrian Garcia Bogalano, who, you know, like I said many, many times, if you guys listen to podcasts or even other films that I've reviewed of his, and I've talked about all the films that I even mentioned, I've probably reviewed at one time or another. He's one of my favorite modern day directors. You know, this guy doesn't really get a lot of credit for what he does, which is very shocking to me, considering he's done a lot of really good films and continues to, you know, to make really interesting films. One thing I really like about his direction in films is he takes on a lot of different types of subgenres and takes a lot of different, you know, just angles to horror. And I think that kind of makes a full director. I really look forward to what he's going to do next. So, and this one came out a couple years ago. I think he's actually done a couple films since, so which I haven't checked out, but I'm not sure if they're available or whatever. But anyways, I digress. Black Circle, the Mexican Swedish co-production starring the beautiful Christina Lindberg, who was probably in her late 60s here. I think she was around 67, 68 years old when she did this one, but you can still tell it's her. But I'm going to give this one 7.5 out of 10. I think it's a very, very solid film. I don't think it's top shelf. I don't think it's bottom shelf by any means. It definitely has its moments. The very cool thing about this, it actually does come with the CD soundtrack. So, which makes a lot of sense because there's a lot of really good shit in here. So obviously the disc is in the player. But yeah, and then here's the chapter card for it and stuff like that too. There is a bunch of features on here, which I think there is a commentary with the director. So one day I might actually listen to that. While I'm doing these 31-day horror reviews, I'm not trying to dig into the features and stuff because it's a little bit tougher. You're more time crunched and stuff like that. But I'd like to hear his commentary on this. Maybe give a little bit more insight into the narrative and explain things too. So, but yeah, Black Circle, I recommend it. It's a good film, especially if you like Bogalano, man. He's a good director. So, anyways, guys, that's gonna do it for day 2 here. I'll be back tomorrow for day 3, and I'll check you then. And as usual,